to Greece and to the Bahamas this year, and of course, then as soon as anybody goes anywhere, I say, oh, did you get pictures? So remember that.
Like a fool, we
I'm
say
looking right at
yes.
Mary.
Yeah, Jim's already been warned.
Yeah. So we encourage traveling, yeah, but it's very, very nice that you organized all this for us, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
It's nice to be able to get an opportunity to see things that we wouldn't otherwise see.
Mhm.
So, thank you.
Okay. Well, we'll see how organized I am. I don't know. I tried to take notes, and it's a real mess. It's all over the place. So I'll probably be backtracking and everything else. We also, this was in November that we went to Greece. And it was a place we always wanted to go, and a good deal came up, so we took it. And, but it was, it was a week basically, and sometimes we just go ourselves and go where we want to go, and sometimes we'll take a tour. And we took a tour on this one, and because it has such a rich history and so many archaeological sites and so on. When you take a tour, they pick you up at the airport and carry bags.
Very nice.
And it's no pressure. All you have to do is follow along and listen, basically. And so it was nice. And our tour guide was an archaeologist, basically, a trained archaeologist. And she took us all around. So it was really good. I tried to ransack the house through what do we have that we brought back from Greece, and there wasn't much. And, we have a book on Delphi, which I'll pass around.
You're Rick Steves.
Huh?
Exactly. You are Rick Steves.
I just watched Rick Steves' Greece, and he went to the same place. But he did a much better job. And then found some olive oil soap. Pass that around. And then I found this, which is also olive oil soap. This is from Croatia, which we picked up a few years ago. And it's still in the closet, so it's the same stuff. And that's just right up the peninsula. So. And this is a map just showing you where we went. I'll pass that around. And we didn't cover that much territory. And then here are some pictures. We have some pictures, but these are much better. These are professional ones. So I'll pass those around. You can look at these. And, let's see how well mine don't match up to these. That's
Okay.
about it. When we went to Greece, it's a place I always wanted to go, but really didn't know all that much about. I knew more about ancient Greece than I do modern Greece. And, it tends to be it's not a third world country, but it's not a rich country either. And so the people, they've gone through some bad economic times recently. You probably remember a few years ago, and they had like a 25% unemployment rate or whatever. And, the tour guide said, well, things have improved. She said it's down to about 22%. So she says, I guess that's improvement. But it's interesting. Athens is huge, just a huge city. It's just about 4 million people. And the entire country is almost 11 million people. So most of the population is in Athens. And that's where the jobs are, basically. Tourism is one of their biggest things. It's probably over 25% of their economy. And I think they have more people visit Greece than almost anywhere else in the world. I think last year it was, I have the number here, which I probably can't find right now, but I think it was around 18 million people visited Greece last year. And the population of the country is 11 million. So tourism is really big there, and they're really nice. Athens is very safe. It's a huge city, but it's very, very safe. There are pickpockets around, which we never read into, but that's what they would tell you. There are pickpockets, be careful. But there's virtually no violence. It's not a violent place at all. You're safe to walk around, and not bad at all. This is our this Parthenon, which this is a picture taken from the restaurant of the hotel we stayed at, which was right downtown. And, you know, on the 8th floor, on the top floor, they had a restaurant and a bar. And it was a short walk there, but actually the first day we were there, the first full day, we started by going to the Parthenon. And, go ahead, you can probably hit the next one.
Okay, get out of there. No, it'll come, it'll come.
If I touch it, it'll get worse.
Exit.
Tell them about what
At the bottom
happened
it
to
says home
the,
exit, maybe there's
great.
no home button.
Sure. So you can-
this should just, yeah. Oh,
You may have to go get.
okay, there we are, and that should go
Maybe
away.
that'll go away.
Okay.
You know. We're technologically unadvanced.
well.
Okay, there we are.
You're not alone, you're not alone.
There we are.
Yeah, this is a shot from some apartment houses. That's from our balcony of the room at the hotel we were at in Athens. And Athens is very crowded. Athens is very crowded. There's an awful lot of people there. And go ahead.
Yeah, you can see it's mostly residential as well, because that's where everybody lives.
Yeah, so the next morning, we all headed up to the Acropolis, and we got there about, I think we left the hotel at 8 o'clock, and we were probably there at 5 after 8, because it was around the corner. But the tour guide said it was the first time she'd ever been the only ones there. We pulled in, and there was nobody there, just us.
Oh,
Yeah,
very
so it
nice.
was really good. You know, November, we were in late November, just before Thanksgiving, so it was probably the off-season of the off-season. You know, it
Yeah.
seemed like it wasn't really crowded. Wherever we went, we stayed at hotels, and they were not crowded, and, you know, it was a nice time to go, although, again, it was
Yeah.
in the
You don't like
50s,
crowds.
60s, somewhere in there, depending on the day. Let's see.
And this is St. Paul's Walk.
Yeah, so, I have a little place here.
Is this taken at the Acropolis looking
Yeah.
down?
So this is going up to the Acropolis, and that is called Mars Hill. And that was a gathering place that goes way, way back. Matter of fact, into Greek mythology, the gods supposedly tried a god for killing Poseidon's son on that rock. So I don't think that actually happened, but you know, that's what they say. But St. Paul spoke there, apparently, spoke the Gospels there or whatever. So it's a famous gathering place. Good. And this, as we're going up, you can see Athens spread out all around the Acropolis. And this is just one view of, you know, looking at the grid. And yeah, this is, again, on the way up to the Acropolis. So other people were finally catching us, I think, as we were getting near the top, that she would stop and talk to us.
How old are those ruins?
The Parthenon was built just about 500 years BC.
So imagine getting all of that, what have you made it with?
Materials.
Materials,
Yeah.
There, imagine how they did it.
Yeah, and you know, it had been a citadel up there for a long time before that. After Athens defeated the Persians around, I think it was 480 or somewhere around there, BC, that's when they had their big explosion into their golden age. And Pericles, the leader, then had this built on top, and they became the dominant force in the Greek city-states. I mean, it had been a citadel up there for centuries before that, thousands of years before that, actually. So, I mean, the history goes way, way back, you know. We see an old house around here, and, you know, it's nice. It doesn't compare to, you know, thousands of years
It doesn't
BC.
last as long.
So, you know, they established, Athens establishes democracy, and they go through this building program, and that's what we have. Now, the Parthenon lasts, well, because it's well built, or was well built, but also later on, after Christianity takes hold and becomes the official Roman religion, Rome is in charge of Greece by then, and they take out the statue to Athena, and it becomes a church. And then later, when the Turks conquer after the Roman Empire is gone, it becomes a mosque. And what really, they always say the pollution in Athens is so bad it was hurting it and all, and that's true, but they are cleaning that up quite a bit.
But what is the pollution from? Do they have a lot of history?
Cars and, just modern daily pollution, which was much worse several years ago than it is now, but it's still, it's a very busy city and all that. But what really hurt the Parthenon was in the I think it's the 1680s, down here somewhere. The Turks were at war, who were in charge, were at war with the Venetians when Venice was a city-state on its own. And the Turks, for whatever reason, thought it would be a great place to store their gunpowder and arms. And so they put it in the Parthenon, and the Venetians were shelling them, and it blew up, and it destroyed the inside of the building and knocked the roof off, basically caved the roof in. So that was in the 1600s. And then, earthquakes, World War I, World War II. I mean, it's amazing that it's still there, actually. And they are trying to repair it constantly. We were up there and there were workmen. It's just a very slow, long, they'll be doing it forever. It's
Yes.
what goes on. Go ahead, you can do it on. Oh, and this is the Erechtheion. I'm probably mispronouncing some of this stuff. And go to the next one, too. This is very famous for these
Oh, yeah.
6 maidens. And actually, the original 6 maidens were brought inside in 1979. They built a museum at the base of the Acropolis, called the Acropolis Museum, and that's where they've taken all the really good, sculptures and what have you that were on the Acropolis, and they've replaced them with just versions of them. And so that was done in 1979, although in 1801, the English ambassador to the Ottoman Empire, the Turks, he convinced them to sell him a bunch of artifacts. And he took one of the original maidens and a number of other sculptures from the Parthenon and part of the frieze on the roof and other things from the Acropolis and brought it back to Scotland to decorate his castle. And then he was short of money years later, and so I think around 1816 he sold it to the British Museum for twice what he paid for it, so he made out pretty well. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie The Monuments Men. It's not a great movie, but it's George Clooney, Matt Damon, and it's World War II, and they're trying to save monuments in Europe during World War II.
Yeah.
And when that premiered in London 5 years ago or whatever, at the premiere they both spoke about how the things that were stolen by Lord Elgin, the ambassador, should be returned to Greece. And
Yeah.
created a big furor in England, and they were denounced. It's funny.
Yeah.
If you go to the British Museum, you can see one of the original ones. The others are at the Acropolis Museum, and I think we've
Yeah, I
had
think we'll
this.
go there.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, this is just more of the Acropolis. It's, they've labeled pieces and they're putting things and trying to put things together and rebuild.
Oh, look
This
at
is
that.
part of the frieze on the roof of the Acropolis. Although that's not original. That's, they've made it up to look like it was. The original would be down in the museum along with the maidens as well. And this is just a scene from the Acropolis of Athens. That monument in the middle there is, that's a Roman monument actually, from when Rome dominated. And we'll get a closer look at that later.
This
This woman keeps getting in my way.
That's great. I have a feeling she keeps you on track.
That was the theater of Diana, I'm mispronouncing it,
Diocenes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And which goes back 600 years before Christ as well. So, now this is the entrance to the museum, the Acropolis Museum at the base of the Acropolis. And here's one of the original maidens in there. And there was a cleaning process where they were using lasers to clean them, and fairly recently, and they said it was almost like taking a tattoo off a person. It was so encased in grime and soot and everything else for the centuries. But they are looking really good at this point, and the others are there as well. The Acropolis Museum, these posts are actually made to, it's in the same proportion as the Parthenon. And they have the pieces of the frieze and what have you, and so you can walk around in there as if you're in the Parthenon or walking around the Parthenon. So they've done a really nice job.
That's good.
And when they were excavating to build the museum, they found, of course, more artifacts. So rather than disturb them, they've actually built it on top, and they are still working on that as well.
Yeah, that's great.
And this is just a shot of Athens. It is kind of a traffic nightmare, or can be.
Like Boston.
Yeah. That's probably a good comparison. More motorcycles than in Boston because it's cheaper and gas is expensive. But I saw at one point a man. There was a bus and was kind of blocking, and he's trying to get through the light, and he actually pulled it onto the sidewalk and drove around the corner and back on the road. So,
Oh my God.
you don't see that every day. In Boston. As we were going to leave Athens and go to some other areas of Greece, they took us through through the city, and this is the stadium where this was built. And I do have some information on this. Okay, this was where it was originally held. When they brought the Olympics back in 1896, this was the stadium. And it goes back to actually 6th century BC. It was a race course between two hills. And then they built the stadium there, and they held Olympics there, 330 BC. It was made out of limestone. 144 AD, they built it out of marble. And then it kind of fell into disuse because the games get banned because it's kind of a pagan ritual is what it is. And so when Christianity takes over the Roman Empire, eventually you get a Roman emperor who just says, we're not doing any of the pagan stuff anymore. And so when it fell into ruin, basically, and it was renovated for 1896 when they brought the Olympics back. And then in 2004, when the Olympics were in Greece, this is where the marathon ended. It actually started in Marathon and ended here. And they still do that. They do a big marathon race every year celebrating that, and that's where they ended. So, and I think they also had the archery there in 2004.
That's a bus.
That's the bus they drove us around. Yeah. And this is in front of a parliament, right up the street from the stadium, and it's also the site of the unknown soldier, and they change the guards all the time, and so that's a picture of that. But that's a parliament building behind it. And that's in Syntagma Square, which is Constitution Square for when they got their independence. Greece got their independence in it was 1834, and so this is our tour guide, Elena, and she was very, very good.
Very knowledgeable. She's amazing.
And this is simply the picture of the restaurant up at the top of our hotel where I took the picture of the Parthenon.
Yeah.
It's a really nice hotel. And,
Nice
really-
Greek food.
yeah, it was great. It was really good. This is, as we leave Athens, we're going on to the Peloponnesian Peninsula. I did pass that map around, and so we started in Athens, and as we are crossing into this is the Peloponnesian Peninsula, because we cross you go over this canal, and I think the Romans thought of building it first, but they didn't get very far. It was finally built about 100 years ago by the Greeks themselves, and so it made shipping a lot easier to go through that area. But it's the Corinth Canal. The city of Corinth is right over here as well. Go ahead. And then, one thing I meant to mention is where we went. So let me do that first, and then it'll make more sense. So we left Athens and crossed the canal. We went to the city of Mycenae, which is real ancient Greece. I mean, that is ancient to the Greeks that built the Parthenon. That was 1,000 years prior to them. And the Mycenaeans are the guys who attacked the city of Troy with the Trojan horse, that everybody thought was a myth, because it was only in Homer's Iliad. And there was a German archaeologist, Henry Schliemann from Germany, and he was an amateur archaeologist. He wasn't trained. And so all the other archaeologists kind of laughed at him. But in the 1800s, he said, all these myths are based on fact. And so he went to the site of Troy, according to the Iliad, and dug and found the city of Troy, much to the other archaeologists' dismay, I think. And so then he said, well, if Troy exists, so then he went to where Mycenae was supposed to be and found the city of Mycenae. And so all these myths, like Mycenae is where Agamemnon, he was the king of that, and he's the king that led all the Mycenaeans. And the Mycenaean culture, they were in charge of the Greek peninsula like Athens was later, 1,000 years later. They were the leading state, and so they had all of these people. Now, whether they went after Helen of Troy, I don't know about that. I think it was more likely economics, because Troy was in a location to block access toward the Black Sea. And I think they charged big tolls and what have you. And so it was an economic war more than anything else. But it did happen, apparently. So when we got to Mycenae, which was right over in here, this was a little out of order. This is a tomb. They call it a Tholos tomb. And this was supposed to be Agamemnon's wife's tomb, but there's really no factual history to back that up. But it was somebody's tomb from the city of Mycenae. And it's this very rounded, with huge blocks. Amazing that they're able to build this at all.
Yeah.
And again, this is 1,000 years, so this would be roughly 1600 BC that this was built. And there's a number of tombs there, and we'll see some other ones later, but this is the only one that's intact. Because when they were robbed, they could tell it was there because it was a big mound, and so they dug down from the top of the mound and came in through the roof and destroyed the roof. So this was the only one that was still intact at the time. And I think the Turks stole everything out of there, but they didn't go through the roof. It was kind of nice. That was in the 1800s. This is actually the fortress, what's left, I guess, of the fortress of Mycenae, and it doesn't look like too much from here, but it was a citadel on top of a hill that overlooked. You could see for miles. You could see everything around you, and the next one too. This was the Lion's Gate, which, as you entered, and very famous as you entered the city of Mycenae. I think we have another one of me standing under it, these stones that are placed there, that was supposed to be placed by Cyclops, because no man could ever lift anything like that. That's all part of the myth, but they still don't know how they did it. They really don't know how they did it. This is a view from up on top of the citadel, and this is looking at Circle A grave, which were royal tombs that Schliemann found and dug into and got a huge cache of gold out of there. And there was one, it was like a gold mask fit over somebody's face in the tomb, and he said it was Agamemnon's and all, but there's no concrete proof it really was, but it was some royal king from that period. And here's another view of that Circle A tomb. And then this is from at the top, the citadel, what's left of the citadel. And there was a royal palace up there as well. But again, it's all pretty well gone. This was a map, kind of under a case that showed you where everything was on the original. So that other picture would have been from the top up there. You can see the little Circle A up there. Go ahead. And this is one of those other tombs where there's several of them around there, but they're all destroyed from the top like that. And then they have a museum where they brought in a lot of the artifacts that they found. And these are just some of the, now I think some of this is from a much later time, from Pericles' time and the Athenians when they were in charge. Go ahead. But then this is was actually a battering ram that they would use to break in the door of a citadel or something like that. They'd put it on the end of a big beam. And other things they found in tombs, these were kids' toys. And they actually moved. They had kind of moving parts. And they found those in some of the children's tombs. And these were other things all tied to various gods that they dug out of the tombs. So they're little amulets and different things for their religion. And a whole cache of the Bronze Age helmets. This was, Mycenae was a Bronze Age civilization, basically. And nobody really knows why it ended. It kind of, there was what they call the late Bronze Age collapse, and all the Bronze Age civilizations kind of just went down as Iron Age came in, and they were making steel weapons. So they know that was part of it, change in technology. But it didn't seem that that would alone destroy all the cultures and everything, and it really did. They kind of slipped into the Dark Ages for a while. And they still are not sure as to why it all ended like that. Let's just see if there's something else on Mycenae here. Yeah, one other thing just to mention about Mycenae was that it was a very warlike culture, and dominated by a king and the army and the whole thing, and they're very much into fighting each other and dominating each other. So they've really set up these citadels like Mycenae, and there was another one not too far away that we drove past. We didn't go in it. Tiers, I think it was called, and that was another big palace on top and all of that. But what they had was a source of water, because that could kill you if you didn't have water and you're surrounded and you're trying to last out a siege. And what they did at Mycenae is they had a spring, and they actually dug and put pipes that, and then had a pond underneath the ground, and they had a tunnel that went to it, and they had a secure water source forever. And so it was very difficult to conquer those guys. You know, I think that's why they were not conquered, and that's why they wound up dominating, actually, one of the reasons anyway. But even Tiers, the one down below, they had a water source that was hidden under there too, so I think it was pretty common practice. After we left Mycenae, we continued on over here to Olympia, which was the site of the first Olympics, and which was in 776 BC. And Olympia was not a city-state. It was basically a religious sanctuary, and it was dedicated to Zeus, and the games were to celebrate Zeus, basically. There were pan-Hellenic games, and what they did, the Greek city-states were all, somebody's always at war with somebody. They can never get along, you know, they just can't get along. It'd be like the United States without a federal government. Well, we're sort of in that situation. No, I mean, go there. But they, you know, if all the states had their own armies and everything, it would be
Yeah.
really pretty crazy. And so that's the situation it was. And so what they did is they all had the same religion, so they worked out a truce, and they had a 3-month truce, and they all came to the sanctuary, religious sanctuary, and they competed against each other in games. And so, and it was an attempt at peace, actually, to try to work out peace agreements between city-states. And so the first one was held in 776 BC, after the full moon of the first full moon after the summer solstice, apparently. They're all tied right into nature there. And they had a 3-month truce where nobody was supposed to fight anybody, and all wars were on hold for a while. And they came and did this. At its height, it would last for about 5 days and had 18 or 20 different events. The victors were given like an olive, a little crown made of olive leaves and an olive branch cut from the sacred grove of olive trees. And it's interesting, today that's where we get the olive branch symbolizing peace. Even if you look at the $1 bill on the back, the eagle has got arrows in one talon and olive branch on the other. So but that is where that comes from. So they continued, even when Greece was, the Greek city-states were conquered, first by Philip of Macedon, Alexander the Great's father. He continued the games. And they continued under Roman rule later on until Christianity took hold, and then they were outlawed. And that's when this area went into just disuse and kind of fell apart. And this was a tunnel, actually, that led out to the field where the events would be played out. It did rain a couple times while we were there, but only when we're on the bus or at night in the hotel. It was incredibly lucky. And I think we got to Olympia and it just poured that night at the hotel. And in the morning, we're eating breakfast and it just looks like a deluge out there. And she said, well, we're gonna get in the bus, we're gonna go over anyway, and we'll see. And we've got some umbrellas, and if people want to go, we'll walk around. And we got over there and it stopped raining and everybody got off the bus and we were the only ones there. So it just worked out, and we walked around and we're there as long as we wanted. And then they have an excellent museum there as well, and we went through that.
I just want to point out that animal at the bottom, that's a dog.
A dog.
And in the outskirts of Athens and throughout Greece, I'm assuming, is filled with stray dogs and stray cats. And they appear to be taken, definitely the cats, they put food and water out for them.
Yeah.
The dogs are all friendly, and they don't bother you, they're not begging, but they're very, and I'm just assuming they put this food out for these animals, but you can tell they're strays, they're very matted coats and that sort of thing, you know?
Yeah, so these are just more shots of Olympia, which after it fell into disuse, after Christianity came in, then earthquakes. Greece has earthquakes a lot, and so that helped destroy a lot of these old artifacts as well.
Sorry? Are we ready? Okay. Yeah, this was an olive oil tasting event. Olive oil was so important to them, and it was fun. And I just wanted to mention, Joe was talking about the Greek economy a little earlier. Along with everything else and the high unemployment, their olive industry, their trees all have a virus now. 90 to 99% of the trees are affected. And they're going to be able to produce olives for soap and that sort of thing, shampoos, but not for their real product, which is olive oil. And so they're sad and they're worried, and
Yeah, but I think this has happened before too. And so it's not like it's going to wipe everything out, but it's not a good year. It was not a good year the past year for them. After that, after we left Olympia, we went up through along the coast there, the Peloponnesian, and crossed it used to be a ferry, but now it's a huge bridge, and continued over and went to Delphi, which is the site of the Delphi Oracle, and another religious site, not a city-state at all. And this was the shot from our, again, balcony of our hotel room. It was right up in the mountains, and this is some of the best weather we had the whole time. Delphi was incredible. It was a beautiful day. This is looking toward the, we had come up, again, that coastline, so we had come up along this side and eventually up here. And that's a town down there by the water. And what you see here, all this area in here, these are all olive groves.
There's a patch of earth that has an olive tree.
Yeah, I mean, it's olive trees everywhere and groves everywhere. So you'll see a forest, but it's not necessarily a forest, it's all olive trees is what it is. And, another shade, you see the windmills on the farther mountains there. And again, that's a slightly better shot, but this is all olive trees down here. This whole area was all olive trees. And I mean, that is, you know, even in Athens, we would, this is at Delphi, even in Athens, I remember talking to the bartender up in the restaurant, and he was saying that nobody is from Athens. You know, they're there, but they're there for work. And he came from somewhere near Olympia. His family lived there, and they had so many olive trees, but he came here for a steady job and steady income, and he goes back and forth. And that's typical. It's very typical. It seemed it. I mean, I ran into several people that were doing that.
So this is Delphi, yeah.
Yeah, this is Delphi, and this is the treasury of Athens, actually. Again, and they had these at Olympia as well, whereas city-states would bring gifts to the gods, and it could be gold or whatever, and they would have a treasury building where they would store it, and it would increase their prestige and their power, actually. And Athens had a very large one, actually, and a lot of things in that. And these are just some more shots of Delphi. It's very, very beautiful, just incredible. And you have to keep walking up. It's way up. That is the Temple of Apollo right there, the remnants of it. Go ahead. This is a theater that's there, and I think that sat 5,000 people, I believe, and still in very good shape. And you continued all the way up to the stadium, which I don't think we have a picture of. But anyway, that's again more shots of the Temple of Apollo, and there were 20 different treasuries there. This rock, now that was in the book that I passed around as well. This, again, it all ties into their religion and myth and what have you. This was supposed to be the stone that was dropped from heaven and landed in Delphi, and they thought of Delphi as the center of the earth, or they called it the navel of the earth, but the center of the earth. Supposedly Zeus, in the center of the galaxy, released two eagles, sent one east, one west, and they met in Delphi. And so they considered that the center of the universe. And so the oracle was a priestess would try to tell people what they should do. You know, they would come and ask questions of the oracle before they did anything big in their lives. It was for individuals, it was for states to do this as well. And they always tried to answer cryptically, apparently. And so the most famous example, there's one you hear where a king, I forget who, I think it was Lydia, which was a Greek city-state in Turkey, actually, at the time. The city-states were not just, at the time of Athens and all of that, so 500 years before Christ. It wasn't just Greece. Greece, at that time, was this whole area, and Greek city-states were all over the place. So Troy was over here, for instance. So apparently he asked the oracle if he should attack Persia, which he wanted to do, and the oracle said, you know, if you attack Persia, a great empire will be destroyed. And he attacked, and he lost, and he just misinterpreted that answer, apparently. It was his empire that was going to be destroyed. And so that's one they always quote, you know, as an example. This is another artifact. You just don't see these anymore.
That's so true.
And I had to take a picture of that. I've seen one of those in years. This was outside the museum in Rupert, but I'm not exactly sure how old that is, and that may have been Roman, actually.
Was it on the wall or floor?
No, it's the floor. It's the floor. You couldn't walk on it. You were looking down on it from a patio area. And at the museum, these are some of the different things, and they would send these from all over the Greek city-states. I think that one came from Naxos, which would be this island over here. And we sent that to Delphi. And there's I think in the book going around, there's a picture of, here, this is the charioteer. It's a bronze charioteer. And that actually came from a Greek city-state in Sicily. So, I mean, they were all over that end of the Mediterranean and even beyond a little bit. This is another shot of those, from our hotel. And those are all olive trees, olive groves. And this is another town we went through on the way back towards Athens. It's a beautiful little town that we stopped at and let us grab lunch there. And this was a World War II memorial. We didn't stop. I just took that from the bus because she's telling us, oh, there's a big memorial up here, but we didn't stop. And we should have, but kind of shot by and we got a picture. And I happened to look it up, and I won't bore you with it, but it's Distomo. It celebrates the Distomo massacre, or it's in honor of the Distomo was a village in 1944. Greece was occupied by Germany in World War II. And there were some Waffen SS that were in a convoy going through the area, and the partisans attacked them. And they just went to the nearest village and started knocking on doors, pulling people out and killing them. And they killed like 214 men, women, and children. And so the Greeks had no way to deal with this. After the war, they kept trying to do something about it for war reparations, but they were kind of small potatoes compared to everything else that was going on, Nuremberg and so on. But I just found this morning. I looked it up, and it was in 1997 they were finally awarded 28 million euros. But the trouble is, it's one thing to be awarded it; it's another thing to collect. And so they went to Germany about this, and the Germans said, "No way! We don't owe you guys anything. That's it's illegal. You can't do this." In 2000, the Greek Supreme Court confirmed the 28 million finding, but there wasn't anything they could do about it. The German court said no. So somehow an Italian court got involved with this. I'm not even sure how. In 2008, Italian court said that they could take any German territory owned in Italy as reparations. And so they were supposed to get a villa in the Lake Como area, which is a very beautiful area, owned by the German state. But then the International Court in The Hague disavowed that. And so they said it violated German immunity in Italy or whatever. And the last I heard, 2014, that was reversed in an Italian constitutional court, and now they say new claims can be brought. So I don't know where it's going from there. I mean, it just goes on and on.
Who built that?
Yeah, the Greeks built that. The Greeks built that for the villagers that were lost. But it's interesting how the hard feelings are still there. And, we were in Croatia just a few years ago, and 20 years after the wars that ravaged that area, and there's real hard feelings there. people, license plates can tell where a car comes from, and if somebody goes to like Dubrovnik in Croatia from, one of the other little places.
Sarajevo.
Yeah, and they could tell where the car's from on the license plate, and they were destroying the cars. And so they had to change because they had, the Bosnians had shelled Dubrovnik during the war for no other reason than they could, because they're up on a hillside. So it's a mess. I remember being in Europe in 1969 in Germany, and there were still bullet holes in walls and a lot of hard feelings and everything else. And that was like 24 years after World War II. So it just seems to, I don't know if it ever gets better. I don't know. Don't want to end this on a bad note.
No.
So, we're back in Athens. And this is a close-up of that Roman artifact. This was,
Hadrian's?
this is the Arch of Hadrian. And there's also this is the temple to Zeus, actually. Temple to Zeus, built by Hadrian, but then there is an arch, and I think the arch, and there's the arch. And actually, if you look through the arch, that's the Acropolis up there behind it, so it's right in that area. And,
Acropolis means city on a hill,
well, a citadel on
or a citadel. And a citadel is a fort.
it. Yeah.
Okay, on a hill.
Which it was. Okay, and then when we got back to Athens, you could either have a day off and just wander around on your own, or you could take a tour of 3 Greek islands, which is what we did. And so we got on a boat, and just a day out there, and they gave you lunch on the boat. The first island we went to was Hydra, and there's no cars on Hydra at all, and everything is moved by either donkeys or you can have a bicycle apparently, but everybody walks around. Beautiful place. They only had it's about 2,000 people live there, and most of them in what they call Port Hydra, which is right here. There are other little hamlets around, but it's a very small island. And so one hamlet might have 19 people and another one 15 or something like that. So everybody is right here. But it's the real off-season. We could have had any seat in the restaurant.
Yeah.
But it was extremely beautiful, very, very nice. And so these are mostly pictures of Hydra. We also went to Poros. So again, more of Hydra. And this is Poros, actually. We walked up to the top there, and they were all beautiful little places. And just to get a taste of the islands, I guess they say that one of the nicer ones to go to, we're over here, right near Athens in the Peloponnesian Peninsula. But Santorini, which is out here, is supposed to be really gorgeous. And we see things on travels for that. Maybe. This last one, Aegina, the last island we went to, was a big, they had a big fishing industry, and a lot of they had been boat building and actually challenged Athens if you went back about 1,000 years. They were very powerful in their own right. But this was the local fish market, and they were also famous for pistachios. And this is just the scene of the harbor and some of the boats. We bought some pistachios there and sat there and ate them or whatever. But it was, this is a Greek Orthodox church that was there as well, which you see all over the place. And this was a guy who had a little sort of business going from his boat, and so but it was an excellent tour, and it's a long ways to Greece. Greece is like the far side of Europe, borders Asia. So it's about a 10-hour flight from Boston.
Straight?
With a break in Paris. We changed planes in Paris. We were there for like an hour and a half, so another 3 hours after that. But about 10 or 11 hours altogether. So it's a long ways, but very, very beautiful country. And again, the people are great. And when we were driving around, it was amazing to me that how sparsely populated it is. I mean, you're driving along this beautiful coastline and there's no one there. You know, or very little villages with very few people. And that's because a lot of these people have gone to the city to have a regular job, and they come home when they can, or they leave family members there tending the olive trees or whatever. But it's very, very sparsely populated and incredibly beautiful, just incredibly beautiful. All right, that's about it. And I'm
That's
gonna
it?
turn this over to Linda.
Okay, I'm going to do Harbor Island really fast, guys. It's mostly pictures, very little history. Harbor Island. This is in Europe, Harbor Island. Harbor Island is in the Bahamas. The Bahamas have about 700 islands. Harbor Island is a teeny tiny little island in the Bahamas. Its early history, they were populated by the Lucayan Indian tribe. Christopher Columbus showed up, and within 25 years, the tribe was devastated. They had been enslaved, they had been brought to South America, and in 25 years, that tribe was gone. Later on, so the Spanish settled in the area. There were pirates. Blackbeard used to hide his stash in the various islands. And finally, the English came, and what happened is, after the American Revolution, loyalists who lived in South America and Georgia, South Carolina and Georgia, thank you, Joe, gathered their slaves, and they brought about 7,000 slaves and themselves over to the Harbor Islands and continued on with what they were doing. Happily, Great Britain abolished slavery in 1807.
Yeah.
And so that ended, and immediately everywhere slaves were released if they had anything to do with the British Empire. And so the descendants, the people who live there and who run the show now, are the descendants of African slaves brought from the United States for the most part. Okay, my friend Darby's family had a house there and a little cottage. It's called the Loyalist Cottage.
It's right there on that, too.
Yes, all right, it's in the mural. It's kind of one of the historic landmarks. They sold it about 5 years ago when her dad was sick. The family couldn't really deal with it at the time, but the owners agreed to let them come every year for about 10 or 15 years and use it. And so Darby says, let's go to Harbor Island, and off we went. You know? So that's the little cottage, the blue one. This is, to get to Harbor Island, you first have to travel to Nassau, so that's a nice plane ride. From Nassau, you take this puddle jumper to Eleuthera. Those are our captains. That's Darby, and that's Michael. And most people felt like this woman right over here, she's really worried. It's a bumpy little plane that goes like that, but they just fly you over to Eleuthera. And this is Eleuthera, and this strip up here is Harbor Island.
Huh.
That's the International Airport in Eleuthera. That's the little plane. And then you have to take a van ride to the north part of Eleutheran Island. And once you're at the port there, you grab locals that have a business with their little motorboats, and they take you across to Harbor Island. So it's a real chore to get there. And this is, we're in the boat, everybody's crowded in.
I look real happy.
Yeah, you do.
That's their
It's
canoe.
been a long day. Oh.
And this is Harbor Island. And Harbor Island only has one town, it's Dunmore Town. They have about 2,000 residents. This is more of a village, but it's very pretty. And a lot of hibiscus and bougainvillea.
Oh.
And these are the little alleyways to the two main streets. And that's the cottage. This was a real kind of sad thing for Darby, because her whole childhood, there were 3 generations who would go to that cottage. And hers was, well, her children were the last ones who owned that. And it was kind of run down because her dad was getting old and things weren't being done, and he needed a lot of work. Well, these people totally redid it. They did a beautiful job. It's very nice, but they had to keep the footprint because it's a historical house. It's the Loyalist Cottage. And, but Darby really kind of liked it when we could walk in with sand on our feet, which we had to be a little careful about this trip. A lot of these little lizard gecko type animals around. They don't bother you. This is a little pool. It's cute. Joe actually got in it once. He's the only one who did, and it's sort of a meditation pool. But when we were there earlier, when Darby's family had it, it was a garden. It was kind of nice and lovely. And the inside did not change much. The furniture certainly changed. I just want to get through these pictures and onto, here we go. Harbor Island. There's a man who lives on Harbor Island, but he keeps horses both on Harbor Island and on Eleuthera. And his profession right now is he just takes people out for horseback rides and he brings them onto the beach. And you can ride horses on the beach. And this is the best mode of transportation there. People have cars there now. But the first time we went, people only use golf carts. And it's a lot of fun, it's safe, and it gets you everywhere you need. The island's 2.5 miles long and 1.5 miles.
Oh my God. You can walk everywhere.
Or is it 3.5 miles long? One of
And there
them.
are 2,000 people on it.
And yeah, 2,000 people. Yep. Yeah. This is the path on the other side of the island. The cottage is on the harbor. So you walk the 1.5 miles to the other side, and you go down here to the beach. And it was not crowded. December is their busy time, but people come after Christmas. And the people who own this cottage now, they go after Christmas, they stay for the whole winter, and then they go back to wherever they live. I'm not sure where it is. And it's just lovely. And these people had a fancy golf cart.
Yeah, that's cute.
You can see that's the preferred one. Yeah. It was Christmas time in the Bahamas. So I had to take a picture of the Christmas lights and the Christmas decorations. And welcome to Harbor Island, the home of friendly people. They are friendly. People say hi to you there. If you're crossing paths, people say hello. You know, and it's just so nice. And yeah, it's good. In fact, they were calling 3 times by people I did not know at the time called me Mama. And it was nice. It was like, hello, Mama. You know, how are you doing, Mama? And I thought, great, I'll be around. This is typically where the locals, there's little coffee shops and people, they have internet there, internet Wi-Fi, and so people go there and get a good cup of coffee and some nice pastry and check their email and that sort of thing. And this is the main grocery store. It's Piggly Wiggly. And Piggly Wiggly, because there's a limited supply of variety, but boy, they have some nice fruits and vegetables there. You can live very healthily just going to this little store and getting your fruits, vegetables, a little brown rice. And oh gosh.
That's the health clinic.
That's the health clinic. Okay, thank you. Yeah. And this is the Anglican Church. A real English influence still remains. When we went there the first time, Joe and I were walking to the beach, and we're going to see the school in a minute, and the kids were playing cricket. A bunch of little kids in their uniforms playing cricket. Oh yeah, this is all the municipal offices right there, the magistrates court, the post office. This is Harbor Island All-Age School. And I have no idea.
That's the administrative office.
The administrative offices.
Library, post office, whatever. That's the old mansion.
Yeah, is
They
that the
call it
haunted house?
Haunted house.
Yeah. Joe went for a walk one day, got lost, and a man driving around, a resident in his golf cart, picked him up and took him on a tour.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really
Gave him a
nice.
little history, took him on a tour, it was really great. Barn entry, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And back to
Really?
this. And this is the cottage, heading down to the harbor. This is the street that we're on, it's called Bay Street. Photo shoot. Harbor Island, like I said, is hard to get to. Although they have tourists, most people own a little piece of something there if they're going there, so there's not a lot of people around. And so they'll do a lot of photo shoots and that sort of thing there. Almost every time we've been, we've seen something like this going on. And because there's not a lot of people to bother you. Certain movie stars go there regularly because they can just go there and relax. What's the woman?
Oh, Jennifer Aniston,
Jen-
Brooke Shields.
Yeah, Brooke Shields and
Regulars.
Jennifer Aniston have property there too. And, okay, around there, there's a fellow just up the beach from there, and he has a little shack, and he sells conch. And these are conch shells right over here. And what they do with the conch, they eat a lot of conch, is they chop off this, pull out the creature inside, and cook it about 5 or 6 different ways. It's a real staple of the diet. And we had conch and
that's
a
heavy.
conch salad. So I thought I was going to have a steamed or sauteed conch salad. It was a raw conch salad.
Oh.
Joe calls it the Harbor Island version of sushi. And I didn't even realize that. But he made one at a time for each. It took forever to get our salad, so he had 4 of them. But he cooked one. He fixed up one at a time. He chopped it up into little pieces, and he put lots and lots of lime juice on it. So it's like a ceviche, but it's not. You eat it immediately. Onions, tomatoes, peppers. It was delicious. I was halfway into it before I realized it was raw. So that's conch salad right there. And some people come by plane.
Well, if you're rich enough, you can hire a seaplane to bring it over.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
someone very rich to.
And they, about
That guy's,
two, all day long, these big ships are coming in and that supplies the
yeah,
island.
those people are getting conch out of the harbor.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the way they travel. Okay. Yeah, so what's happening in Harbor Island now is a little sad. The people that land on the far end of the island is being built with condos or sort of a resorty flavor to it, gated communities, that sort of thing. It's mostly Europeans doing this. And the residents are happy to have people there, but what's happening is they're cutting down a lot of trees to do this, And one fellow was talking to us one time saying it's just really too bad because we're losing all these trees right now.
Yeah, the whole
on this
soil.
property.
And the people are being priced out too. They're moving
Yes.
to Luther now.
Yeah,
Like here, like everywhere.
yeah, right.
Yeah, same
Right.
thing. Same thing.
Okay.
Is that it?
That's it.
That's it? How many times have you been there?
Thank you.
How many times have you been there?
We went there twice. We went once with Darby and her parents.
Oh.
Another time with, was it just
Been there
Dad?
3 times.
With her dad and Darby. And then this last time with Darby and Mike.
So you've been there 3 times, how nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really nice spot because it is off, it takes you all day to get there.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And you can take a flight to that little airport. They do land jets there,
Wow.
but I forget which, I think you have to fly to Miami first, I don't know. where
Yeah,
the
you mean
hell-
to Eleuthera Airport
Oh,
International?
no, it's not Miami, it's Fort Lauderdale.
Fort
And then
Lauderdale,
they'll
yes.
fly you over in that, but it's easier to just fly to Nassau and then catch a little plane. It's a 20-minute flight to Eleuthera in that little plane. And then, you know, the cab ride to the shore and then the water taxi over. It is a job to get there, but that makes it nice. It's not
It's an adventure.
Yeah, it's really quite nice. And, I was talking to a guy, they have a place there, Valentine's, which is also a marina, and it's a nice restaurant and bar. And I was talking to a guy, and he was living on his boat, and he had money, I think. He was from Colorado, but he had a ranch there, which somebody was taking care of, and they had a house in Key West, which he was renting. And so him and his wife are living on a boat, and they're traveling around that area from Key West to the Bahamas and so on.
Yeah.
And his wife was writing scripts for Swedish TV or something. She was a Swedish woman. I never met her. He was we were watching football games together. He hated the Patriots. But he was from Colorado. So.
Yeah.
But that must be the wonderful part of traveling, you meet such wonderful people.
Yes.
That's the fun of it, I think, along with seeing everything, but just nice people that you meet.
Yeah, that's true. And that makes all the difference.
Sure. If they're friendly and helpful.
Most everybody just looking to improve their lives a little bit
Yes.
if they can and live a good life, so, generally.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry I got on that whole war thing there. Monument.
No, that
No,
would,
but it's a reality.
That's history.
yeah, it is, it's reality. And we never learn, people just, they never learn.
Well, we don't see all of the, you know, in terms of news, we only have students.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, so then they have the whole experiences and what that experience there is really.
Yeah.
It's like, I always laugh when we're hearing news from Canada and I'll say, somewhere in Canada, and it's like, where?
They're very vague.
Yeah.
But Joe and Linda, that's really, this is
Thank you.
wonderful again.
Thank you.
A wonderful
Thanks for
job of,
coming. I know.
well, you really make us feel like, you know, we've been able to join you. I mean, you really organize everything so well, we can, you know, follow your trail and, you have, you know, you bring such, wonderful knowledge of where you've been and the research is evident.
That's a history teacher.
Yeah, it does really, no, I always get a sense of, I would have enjoyed being in class with you. Because you really, you do a wonderful job of presenting for us. So where are you gonna go next? What's next?
We don't know. We'll let you know though.
Yeah,
You'll be the
yeah,
first
no,
one.
no, but that's wonderful. It is, thank you so much. Because they've taken us to China and to Ireland and,
That's good. It makes me appreciate it more because I have to organize all this and go over it again.
Go over it again, yes.
so they give you an assignment. No, I really, thank you very much. This is really very nicely done, so,
Yes.
thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, everybody, and joining us.
Well,